On their 5th anniversary, his mistress kissed him in front of everyone, and his black wife smiled. The dining room went still. A fork clinked. Celine Voss slid her chair back, cradled Chase Mercer's jaw, and kissed him slow, possessive, 5 bold seconds. Lipstick smeared red on his cheek. He didn't flinch. "Don't make a scene," someone whispered. Nyla Hart set a hand on her 8-month belly. 2 small kicks answered like knocks from the future. Heat rose, but her spine held. Celine smirked. "Be gracious, Nyla. Strong black women lead with grace, right?" Chase looked past her as if she were an extra chair. Around them, champagne fizzed over judgment. Nyla didn't cry. She counted the months. She remembered the emails. She recalled every silence he mistook for safety. They read stillness as surrender. Tonight wasn't about tears, it was about leverage. The kiss was the signal. In minutes, she would stand to leave the table and make 3 calls that turned silence into consequences. But which call lands first and who loses everything? Follow to see who breaks first. Before the room froze, Charlotte knew their names. Nyla Hart turned numbers into neighborhoods. She could read risk like weather. Chase Mercer sold a vision with that smooth smile and a handshake everyone trusted. Together, they built Brightstone Urban from a rented desk in South End to headlines and ribbon cuttings. Magazines called them a model partnership. Local radio said they were proof that hustle could heal a city. At home, ultrasound photos covered the fridge. 2 names waited on sticky notes: Zora and Cairo. Baby kicks timed Nyla's mornings. Investor calls timed her nights. She carried spreadsheets and vitamins in the same purse. Chase carried charm and promises, and the city clapped. Cameras loved them. Bankers did too. They posed on rooftops at sunset. They said the future was affordable, beautiful, fair. Nyla believed every word she vetted. She believed the math. She believed the marriage. The higher they rose, the softer the ground felt beneath her heels. Glory is bright, but glory sometimes hides cracks. Celine Voss entered Brightstone with a resume that sounded pre-approved. New York polish. Columbia degree. Letters from people who matter. She spoke in clean bullets and deadlines. She named problems before others noticed them. She named solutions before others breathed in. Chase praised her instincts in every meeting. Titles followed. Director to VP quicker than a fiscal year. Nyla watched the ascent and decided to be generous. Pregnancy had asked much of her body. She let Celine shoulder travel optics and operations noise. She took the bed rest days, then went back to the models at night. Trust felt efficient. Trust felt kind. The hallway chatter said they were unstoppable with Celine on board. Nyla repeated it until it felt like a fact. She handed off small fires, then a few medium ones. Thank you emails stacked up. So did Celine's proximity to Chase. The praise kept rolling. The graphs kept climbing. But a truth waited behind Nyla's ribs trust is the riskiest investment when the receiver is hungry. The hum was small at first. A phone turned face down at dinner. A workout bag that smelled like new cologne. Calendar blocks labeled site visits that never reached the shared drive. Team photos where Celine stood too near shoulder-brushing suit-sleeve eyes locked on Chase while everyone else looked at the lens. Nyla told herself to breathe. Fertility treatments had trained her to do that. She stroked her belly and counted to 10. She put her faith in schedules and numbers. She weighed her fatigue against her fear. He was building. She was carrying. People forget how heavy both can be. It's the 3rd trimester, she whispered into the mirror. Not suspicion. Yet the mirror did not answer. At night, she checked cash flow, highlighted timing lags, then shut the laptop and tried to sleep. In the quiet, the hum got louder. Trust is a blanket in winter. Intuition is the draft coming under the door. She pulled the blanket higher and pretended not to feel the cold. One delay changed everything. Nyla's laptop updated and forced a restart. She asked for Chase's. He hesitated, handed it over, then left the room. The screen blinked awake into open mail. Threads stacked like bricks. Vendor, investor internal. Then the tone tilted. Compliments turned to late-night confessions. Can't stop thinking about last night. She's too focused on the pregnancy to notice. The words punched, then numbed. She kept reading. Work bled into plans. Plans bled into erasure. After the twins, we ease her out. Not a fight, a glide, not a conversation. A strategy. Her heart cracked right down the vow line. Her head did not. It switched on lights. Save, forward, screenshot. She closed the lid and placed it back on the desk like it burned. In the kitchen, she finished a glass of water without tasting it. In the nursery, she smoothed a tiny blanket and chose a different future. Tears could come later. Tonight, the logic would drive. Strategy had been waiting its turn. Feelings can lie. Ledgers rarely do. Nyla followed transfers like breadcrumbs. Small amounts at first tucked into project codes that looked legitimate. Then, larger wires into entities tied to Celine. Property deeds quieted in a separate drawer. Renovations billed to Brightstone appeared on addresses the company did not own. Alonzo's rules echoed in her mind even before she met him. Money moves in patterns. She mapped them as if mapping a storm. She saw whose name appeared on every sunny day. It wasn't hers, it wasn't Brightstone's, it was Celine's. The affair hurt. The theft incinerated. They had counted on her exhaustion. They had counted on diapers bottles and midnight feedings to fog her sight. They had miscounted. She sat at the table and wrote 2 words, justice, restitution. Revenge tasted sharp in her mouth, but the word did not fit. This was recovery. This was repair. She closed the notebook and pressed her palm to it as if to stamp a seal. She would take back what was stolen. The first call went to Tiana Brooks. Old friend. New mother once removed. Attorney always. Neela spoke without drama. Dates, amounts, names. Tiana did not gasp. She listened. Then she set the terms. No confrontation, no leaks. Collect, preserve, protect your health, protect the twins. We build the case while they build their fantasy, she said. We keep you out of the splash. Nyla agreed. Silence became a practice. She photographed documents in daylight. She exported emails at midnight. She stored duplicates where chance could not reach them. She walked slower. She ate better. She wrote questions for doctors and answers for auditors. She learned new patience. Anger wanted a stage. Discipline wanted a file. When shame tried to rise, she laid another exhibit on top of it and kept going. 3 months sounded long. It felt like purpose. Each day added a brick to a wall between her and collapse. When the wall was high enough, she would knock on the right doors. Names joined her calendar like reinforcements. Marcus Ellery, specialist in divorces where assets try to hide. Calm voice, brutal filings. Rhea Kane, investigator with a memory for faces and roots. She followed people, not gossip. Alonzo Keating, forensic accountant with courtroom scars. He smiled only at balanced columns. They met, then moved. Marcus drew the map of what needed freezing and when. Rhea took schedules and gave back photographs and timestamps. Alonzo read the accounts like scripture. 2 million in diversions became visible, then provable. Structures that looked like efficiency broke into shells. Work paid for one address landed in another. The pattern tightened. It was not sloppy. It was confident. That helped. Confidence leaves footprints. They think you'll be nursing, Marcus said. They think you won't be looking. Nyla set both hands on the table and leaned forward. Let them think, she said. The team agreed on a signal. A moment no one could argue with. A moment they would supply themselves. Rhea brought audio one gray afternoon. Voices bled through restaurant hum. Celine's first. Smooth. We'll call it a maternity glide path. Make it caring. Shift decisions off her calendar. She won't fight while breastfeeding. Chase answered lower. Board likes optics. Do it quiet. Silverware clinked. Celine again. And we anchor operations under me now. She can advise from home. The word laugh barely concealed itself. Nyla held the phone and closed her eyes. The babies rolled under her hand as if feeling the change in her pulse. Not a rumor. A plan, not a slip, a doctrine. Alonzo layered the recording under the money trail. Marcus marked the phrasing for later. Glide path, he said, trying the word. A gentle push off a cliff. Nyla opened a new folder and labeled it in plain English. Erasure. Motherhood had turned her softer in many ways. Not here. Here it carved her into shape. She did not harden against love. She hardened against theft of her place. By the time the anniversary dinner arrived, the case had bones. Exhibits stacked like a spine. Neela dressed slowly and studied herself in the mirror. She practiced breathing until the tremor left her hands. Chase texted a heart and a time. Celine did not text at all. The hotel lobby smelled like lilies and oil. The Mariposa room glowed with warm light and white linens. Family filtered in, investors too. Compliments skimmed the surface. Underneath, Nyla felt the old chill that draft she had been denying. She looked at the long table and thought of ledgers. She looked at the ceiling and thought of ceilings. She took her seat without yielding an inch of her name. Tiana held her gaze across the room and gave the smallest nod. The plan did not need speeches. It needed the spark they would bring with their own hands. A glass chimed for quiet. Nyla placed her palm on her belly and waited. The countdown was already at 1. Celine stood, slid her chair back, and reached for Chase as the room quieted. Her palm framed his jaw like a trophy. Her mouth took his slow and deliberate 5 full seconds that scraped the air. A glass hit the floor. Someone hissed, "Wow," pleased to witness the ruin. Chase blinked and stammered, "It's not." The lipstick print on his cheek said everything. Eyes gathered like crows. Nyla's spine did the work her voice refused to do. She placed her hand on her belly. 2 kicks answered steady as a drum. The shame burned, then hardened a kiln around her will. Humiliation wanted theater. She chose timing. 3 months of silence sharpened behind her eyes. They thought she would sob. They thought she would plead. She smiled instead, small and unreadable, and felt the plan stir. The signal had arrived, hand-delivered by their arrogance. This kiss would age into evidence. This crowd would repeat it for free. When she finally stood, the table shifted, not her. The room began to buzz, bright with judgment. Chase's mother leaned toward Nyla and whispered through a smile, "Lower your voice. Don't make it one of those scenes." Celine smoothed her dress and tilted her head, sweet as a blade. "Be gracious, Nyla. Strong. Black women lead with grace, right?" The words landed like a mask pressed over a bruise. Nyla met her gaze and did not blink. "Real grace makes room for accountability," she said, even and clean. Air left the table. Chase reached forward, then stopped, caught between shame and show. Nyla drew her hand from the linen, lifted her clutch, and rose. She didn't sway. She didn't shake. She moved with the calm of someone who owned the next hour. The corridor smelled like lilies and disinfected pride. In the mirror, she saw a woman no one could shrink. Behind her chairs scraped and whispers gathered hungry for mess. She left them hungry. The plan did not feed crowds. It fed consequences. In the quiet of the restroom corridor, the clock finally belonged to her. Nyla opened her phone and dialed the first number. Marcus Ellery answered on the second ring. "File the divorce at dawn. Send the full packet to the IRS. All exhibits unlocked." He didn't waste breath. "Copy," he said. The second call reached an investor ally who had trusted her spreadsheets for years. "Pull the 50. Tell the others why. An audit is coming by morning." Silence. Then done. The third call went to the bank's fraud hotline. She read the account digits without checking. "I'm the co-owner. I'm reporting embezzlement tied to these transfers." The agent took details like a lifeguard taking a pulse. Documented, yes. She ended the call and finally inhaled. 3 numbers, 3 doors clamping shut. She pressed her palm to the cool wall and felt the twins roll as if agreeing. The ache in her chest loosened. Not joy. Control. Control enough to walk back through roses and cameras without flinching. By morning, Charlotte had a new headline. "Federal Eyes on Brightstone Urban." Sources cited internal evidence. Photos of the office looked colder than yesterday. Feeds turned quick and loud. Commenters performed certainty. Some called her bitter. More called her brave. Nyla let the phone buzz on the table while tea steamed untouched. She answered one call her mother's. "Baby, are you safe? I am." The voice on the line wrapped her soft armor over a bruised night. "Then keep going. We've got you." The words steadied the room. Tiana texted updates in crisp bullets. Process served filings, received appointments set. Marcus emailed timestamps and a list of next steps. The rest, apologies, demands, gossip, fell into a folder called Noise. Outside, sirens moved like weather. Inside, Nyla breathed to the count of 4 and ate something because the doctor would ask. The babies rolled. Love remained quiet, solid, and practical. The city could argue about motives. Her family knew the truth and held the line. Chase finally reached her near noon, voice frayed. "Nyla, where are you? Agents are here. They're freezing accounts. They're asking questions I can't answer." Paper rustled on his end. Doors opened. He lowered his voice. "Please, help me fix this." She stared at the sunlight crawling across the table. "I know exactly what this is," she said. "I have the emails, the transfers, the deeds. I have had them for 3 months." Silence widened. Then a thud of breath. "You knew about the affair? About the theft? About the glide path to push me out after the twins?" He tried tenderness like a key. "It wasn't supposed to be like this. It was never supposed to be like this," she answered. "But here we are." He asked for mercy. He asked for time. She offered the truth. "You will get due process. You will get counsel. You will not get me." When the call ended, her hands shook. Then they steadied the way hands do after setting down a heavy box. The investors moved like dominoes, each fall unlocking the next clause. 50 pulled, became 20 more, then 10. Brightstone's glow dimmed on screens. Vendors paused shipments. Partners asked for clarity, which meant distance. Chase's parents called voices broken, begging her to think of the children, to slow down, to remember love. Neela softened where it was human to soften. She told them the twins were safe, that their son would have counsel, that she would not poison the children against their father. But she would not slow the law. Love without boundaries is a spill. She refused to mop this one with her future. Tiana drafted measured statements for press and court. Marcus pressed for freezes and disclosures. Alonzo sent another chart that made shame into arithmetic. At night, Nyla turned off the noise and read a board book aloud to her belly. The words were simple and sure. The babies pressed back from within the smallest proof that life keeps moving forward even when an empire falls. While feeds argued, a message slid into her inbox from Everett Lang. The subject was one word: respect. He had mentored her when Brightstone could barely afford coffee. He wrote that he had always known where the brilliance lived. He offered lunch, then changed it to coffee, then changed it again to whenever you can breathe. He laid out a possibility: a new division with his capital and her control, clean books, clean terms, a schedule that made sense for newborn twins, no optics games, no hero speeches. Nyla read the note twice. The ground under her name felt firm for the first time in days. Chase's fame had performed well on camera. Nyla's competence had survived the cameras. The difference mattered. She replied with gratitude and conditions in the same sentence. Written agreements, audits by default, boundaries that could stand in a storm. Everett wrote back, deal. For the first time since the kiss, something like relief touched her shoulders and did not slide off. She went home to pack what the future needed: clothes, records, the hospital bag with tiny hats. The nursery waited in soft yellows and quiet stars. 2 cribs side by side like promises she intended to keep. Neela sat in the rocker and let a minute pass. She could grieve without drowning. She could leave without shattering. Tires crunched in the drive. Chase stood in the doorway, wrinkled suit unshaven. Jaw a man mid-collapse. Please, he said. Let me explain. She shook her head. Explanations are late fees. He asked about the babies. She pointed to the court. He asked about the company. She pointed to the ledger. He asked about them. She pointed to the door. Consequences, she said, not unkindly. They arrive whether we're ready or not, he cried. She didn't. When she lifted the last box, her back ached, and her future felt lighter. She locked the front door, then laid the key on the counter and walked away without looking back. The next morning, her blood pressure ran high. The nurse almost called it nerves. Tiana lifted a brow until tests were ordered. The numbers settled, but the warning stayed. The doctor spoke gently and firmly. Eat, rest, hydrate. Walk when you can. Turn your phone off for hours at a time. You are carrying 2 people, she said. Treat yourself like 3. Nyla listened. She had fought hard for justice. Now she fought hard for breath, for sleep, for the small decisions that keep a body safe. She let Tiana grocery shop. She accepted her mother's soups at the door. She silenced group threads and opened the blinds. The twins rolled like tides. Fear came then went. Purpose stayed. Victories are empty if the body collapses under them. She wrote that sentence in her notebook and underlined it twice. When she closed her eyes that night, she did not rehearse testimony. She counted kicks. She whispered both names. She thanked them for choosing to stay. Chase filed for bankruptcy protection by the week's end, hoping to shelter assets. The court orders met him at the threshold. Accounts froze in place. Properties stopped moving like chess pieces. Celine's calls bounced between lawyers and silence. Her liquid cash thinned faster than her certainty. Reporters chased quotes. Some came to Nyla's door. She didn't answer. Marcus issued the only words that mattered: cooperation, investigation, restitution. Alonzo's final summary read like a map drawn in ink. The diversions were clear. The beneficiaries were named. The holes were counted. Brightstone had once been a promise to the city. Now it was a cautionary tale with glossy photos. Nyla stood at a window and watched rain wash the sidewalk. Money stolen always carries weather with it. It storms on arrival. It floods on exit. Behind her, a packed bag waited by the door, small and ready. Ahead of her, a labor she wanted. Behind her, a labor she survived. She let both truths stand without blinking. After the storm headlines, Everett Lang called again. He did not pitch flourishes. He spoke in plain terms. His capital, her compass, a new arm called Harbor and Hearth Development, work that honored neighborhoods, a calendar that honored babies, no favors, a partnership. Neela listened and asked for what she had earned. Everything in writing. Audits as routine, not insult. Equity that matched contribution, not optics. A clause that protected maternity as leadership, not absence. Everett agreed without theater. He sent a draft before dusk. Tiana scanned the lines and smiled at the margins. "This is clean," she said. Nyla signed the intent and felt her name settle on new ground, not as a shadow behind a smile, as the author of rules. She closed the document and rested her hand on the hospital bag by the door. The timing was tight. Life is often that way. She whispered both names to the quiet room. Zora. Cairo. Then, one more word that tasted new in her mouth. Standards. Labor began at dusk and refused to rush. Hours folded into one another. Nyla breathed like a swimmer counting strokes. Pain gripped then loosened. Tiana held time with calm eyes and small jokes. Her mother prayed soft prayers into the crook of her arm. Then, at a blue hour, no clock owned a cry split the air. A daughter first. Zora. Beautiful, loud, alive. Minutes later, a son. Cairo. Smaller, steady, strong. The world shrank to skin and milk and heat. Nyla kissed damp hair and laughed with the kind of relief that shakes bones. She did not think of court filings. She did not think of ledgers. She thought of lungs practicing for a life, names meant to hold, beautiful and strong. She whispered them again and again. The hurt in her chest thinned into joy. Not perfect joy, real joy with edges. Tiana took a photo that captured none of the headlines and all of the truth. Love had arrived. Love would stay. The flowers came first. A dozen white roses with a card in a familiar hand. Chase wrote that he was sorry. He wrote that he loved their children. He asked for a chance to explain. Nyla asked the nurse to place the bouquet at the desk. She did not send it back. She did not invite him in. For the babies, she told herself, and felt the boundary hold. That afternoon, Marcus called with a voice made of pages turning. The U.S. attorney planned to indict both Chase and Celine within days. Charges would include wire fraud, tax fraud, and embezzlement. The drumbeat of law had found its tempo. Nyla looked at her sleeping children and felt two truths at once. She did not want their father in a cell. She did not want their mother in a story where theft wins. She chose the second truth and let the first ache. She signed a few documents with careful hands. Then she slept without dreams until Zora asked for more of the world. The leaks landed 2 weeks later. Texts and emails appeared on feeds and in group chats. Not the tender ones, the cold ones. She's a distraction we can manage. After twins, we push her to advisory. The public turned. Not all at once, enough to matter. Messages from strangers said, "We see you and keep going." Nyla did not answer. She saved her voice for the room that counted. She met with Patricia the prosecutor and practiced answers that were complete but not grand. She would not make speeches. She would make sense. She drank water when she wanted coffee. She held both babies until her arms ached and her mind calmed. She wrote 3 lines on a sticky note and tucked it in her folder. Tell the truth, honor the work, protect the children. When fear reached for her throat, she touched the paper and reminded herself that quiet wins trials better than thunder. The night before court, she slept like someone who trusted the morning. Court felt smaller than television. It smelled like paper and old wood. Nathan, the CFO, took the stand and pushed through shame. He spoke of pressure and instructions that bent rules until they snapped. He named meetings. He named owners. He named the lie that dressed itself as strategy. The prosecutor followed with lines of proof that clicked into place. Emails where romance turned into logistics. Spreadsheets that placed company money into private pockets. Audio where grace meant erase. Every piece stood on its own. Together they formed something heavier, a system, not a fling, not a mistake, a plan to extract, to replace, to profit. Chase looked down, then up, then nowhere. Celine's jaw flexed and unflexed. Nyla sat very still and kept her breaths shallow. The story no longer needed her anger. It had documents, it had dates, it had math. The jury did not know her heart. They did not need to. They needed what they were getting, a map. When her name was called, she rose without hurry. She swore to tell the truth, then did. She described Brightstone as, she built it. Risk models, investor decks. The first property with peeling paint and stubborn hope. She explained how she found the messages by chance and the money by method. She said the words that had lived in her chest for months. I did not destroy the company. They destroyed it when they committed fraud. I turned on the light. The sentence was simple. It did the work anyway. On cross, a lawyer tried to make her grief into motive. You were angry, he said. Yes, she answered, as any honest partner would be. He tried to make her plan into spite. You wanted revenge. I wanted accountability, she said. There is a difference. When they excused her, she sat down and felt the tremor in her thighs fade. She had not come to perform. She had come to be precise. Precision held. Closing arguments cut in opposite directions. The defense pointed to chaos and called it confusion. The prosecution pointed to patterns and called them what they were. Betrayal of trust, betrayal of investors, betrayal of the law. The jury left. Time stretched thin. Tiana pressed a peppermint into Nyla's palm and said nothing. Hours later, footsteps returned. Faces reappeared. The foreperson stood paper in hand. On wire fraud, guilty. On tax fraud, guilty. On embezzlement, guilty. For Chase. For Celine. The words landed without music. They did not thrill Nyla. They steadied her. She closed her eyes and let breath fill her all the way down. Somewhere a pen scratched the record. Somewhere a clock ticked to the next minute. She thought of 2 cribs and a promise to never lie to the children inside them. When she opened her eyes, the room was the same size. Only the story had changed shape. It now fit the facts as they always were. Sentencing came with winter light. The judge spoke of duty and damage. She weighed letters, losses, and the law. 7 years in federal prison for each defendant. Restitution as ordered. Supervised release to follow. Chase's mother cried into a handkerchief. Celine stared at a point only she could see. Nyla felt no triumph. Relief, yes. The kind that does not smile. Outside, a reporter asked if she forgave them. She considered the question like a contract. I wish them repentance, she said. I wish my children safety. I do not wish amnesia on myself. She carried those words home and wrote them in her notebook. Forgiveness without wisdom is a fall. She chose wisdom. That evening she rocked Zora and Cairo and hummed the same tune her mother had hummed to her. Not a victory song. A survival song. It sounded like clean dishes and paid bills and a door that locks. It sounded like a future they would build slow and right. Harbor and Hearth opened its first file on a kitchen table, then a second on a real desk, then a third on a conference table that smelled like lemon oil and new starts. Money came with conditions she could name and meet. Investors wanted returns and transparency, not photos. Neela insisted on both. Quarterly AU deeds, community hiring, materials that would not poison children to shave costs. She spoke at a small college about integrity. A young woman asked how to survive being doubted. Nyla answered with the lesson that saved her. Document everything. Decide your price. Do not sell your self-respect to keep a seat. The room nodded like a tide. She left with more emails than she could answer and a sense that her story had migrated from scandal to structure. The city began to attach her name to outcomes, not gossip. Victim had never fit. Survivor did for a while. Now, another word began to settle. Builder. 2 years later, ribbon cuttings returned. Not for Brightstone. For a 200-unit community with gardens and a clinic and a park where laughter carried. Families rolled suitcases down new halls. Walls were painted the color of mornings. Everett stood beside Nyla and called her partner in public because that is what she was. Zora and Cairo ran ahead and tripped over air, then laughed. The crowd clapped for many reasons. Nyla listened for one. The quiet confirmation that truth chosen daily builds shelter. The narrator's last words were plain. Winning was not the prison sentence. Winning was choosing truth when lies were convenient. It was protecting life when pride wanted a fight. It was guarding dignity, feeding love, and defining fame on her own terms. If this story made you braver, share it with someone who needs the courage. If you want the next chapter in justice served, subscribe and stay close. The work continues. So does the light.